Celeste is one of the most challenging platformers, consisting of 27 maps in the base game. And while you may know it for speedruns of the base game, it also has a very large and dedicated modding community. The game, while only having 3 actions the player can perform, has those actions pushed to their limits with certain modded maps. And while most of the mods are quite easy, some of them are much harder, pushing the boundaries of what's humanly possible. We will be focusing on one such mod that has become synonymous with some of the craziest achievements ever done in the game. A map created with the intent of being fully impossible for anyone to do, and how the map went from impossible to being done without dying a single time. This is the history of Crystal Garden, the most infamous Celeste mod. Crystal Garden is a Celeste mod created by Etpio and was released for anyone to download on the 20th of February in 2021. It mainly consisted of only 3 mechanics, which are all from chapter 6 from the base game, with the mechanics being Kevin's, which when dashed into move towards the side that is hit, feathers, which let the player fly for a short period of time, and bumpers, which make the player bounce, along with other miscellaneous mechanics like traffic blocks, which move when grabbed, and refills, which refill your dash without needing to touch the ground. The map only consisted of 4 rooms at the highest difficulty the game had ever seen at the time. It was originally going to be the easiest checkpoint of a much longer map, but the creator of the map ended up releasing the first checkpoint as a map by itself after losing motivation to create further. When the map was publicly released, people were interested in the idea and it started garnering a lot of attention, not only for its astronomical difficulty but also the complexity of the map. This was a routing puzzle map, where the challenge was not only the precise timings in the map, but also just figuring out how to clear it and what to do. Looking at the map, the rooms were so convoluted with seemingly no way to clear any of them that no one figured out anything even with the attention it got. All of the rooms were very compact in nature, with these crystal spinners lining every room. There was practically no progress made at first. While many people did try to theorycraft what the solutions and routes for each room could be, these efforts were short-lived with the complexity of each room, and the community was pretty confused. It also did not help that the creator of the map didn't want to give any hints for the solutions for any of the rooms. A bit of progress was made 2 months after the map's release. Someone had figured out a way of doing room 2 and made a task for it, short for tool assisted speedrun, by using external tools to create a theoretical run frame by frame. But Etpio dismissed the route and said it was not the intended solution. That route was subsequently patched in the next update, making it no longer possible. During the next few months till May, every time a new solution was found, the map got updated and patched out the route. This of course made the map more infamous in the community, with it happening multiple times till the map reached update 1.4. Some more progress was made during August, mainly by the player Rafix. He managed to route and clear the first room in 3 segments in real time, though again it was very clearly not the intended solution. He went through these bumpers to get to the other side of the room and used this Kevin to clip through the final part. However, this time, Rafix's solution was not patched out, and Etpio seemed to not care enough to patch it. For the next few months, the map remained dormant, both in any updates made to the map and for any progress on solving the map. No one thought much of the map anymore besides just being a task-only map, and occasionally brought up as an example of what a bad map looked like. It was even theorized that the map was a social experiment intent on wasting people's time. A few months later, some real progress was finally made again, the biggest progress thus far, as Parrot Dash would upload his clear of the first room in Crystal Garden on the 9th of December in 2021, becoming the first person to ever clear a room of the map in real time.
There we go. Nice, I actually did it, Lamo.
He used practically the same route as Rafix did in his 3-segment run, except with an easier feather grab. While Parrot in his messages stated that other rooms didn't seem possible in real time, he clearly said this to mislead people, as everything would change within a single month, and this would only be the start of what was to come. An hour after clearing the first room, he also thought of an idea on how to do room 3, blatantly cheesed of course. And so he decided he wanted to try to clear the map in secret with some help from 2 other people. Clearing the map meant completing all of the 4 rooms of the map, and doing it in secret would mean that the map was far less likely to get an update to de-cheese the map again. And so a Discord server was made including himself, Dog, and Jojo, with the latter 2 added for helping with routing and clearing the map. Dog had also found a route for room 4 at this point. The room disables diagonal dashes, limiting the player to only 4 dash directions. The route he found for room 4 was decently straightforward, starting with some awkward timings for the first half and a pretty easy boss fight for the second half. The highest priority of the room seemed to just be the final sequence of inputs for getting the double dash at the end, which is required to clear the room as it lets you dash twice in a row. You have to dash through this dream block, collect the double dash refill, and make it back by jumping on the corner of this dream block. This jump also had a chance of not being possible depending on your vertical positioning and the dream block positioning, which made it even harder. Now of course this route for room 4 was not even close to being intended, and it was cheesed pretty hard, but it was still decently difficult. Within the same day as Parrot's room 1 clear, Dog managed to clear the 4th room of the map. Now this meant that in a single day, the map went from having 0 of its 4 rooms cleared to 2 of them. The plan at this point was simple: clear Crystal Garden in secret to surprise and shock the entire community. And a lot of effort was starting to be put into it by both Parrot and Dog, while Jojo was mostly busy with something else. The next day on the 10th of December, Dog managed to also snag himself a clear of the first room, and Parrot started playing room 3. The ending of the room with his route required some very awkward and tight timings, but after grinding the 3rd room for a bit and after some chokes, he managed to clear room 3.
Oh, let's fucking go, dude, finally, my god.
Now 3 of the 4 rooms in the map had been cleared, and also Parrot right after doing room 3 quickly made work of the 4th room.
Let's go. That's it.
Dog would also clear the 3rd room a bit later. Now while it did seem the map was going to be cleared very soon considering they had managed to do 75% of the map within only 2 days, room 2 would prove to be a massive roadblock. The only task of the room was very old and completely outdated with the updates to the map, and the only other resource they had for routing was Rayfix, who had already managed to task half of the room, though the task used many inhuman strategies. The thing about this room that made it so much harder was that while with room 1, 3 and 4, the routes used to clear all of them were heavily cheesed with many big skips, room 2 was a bit different. See, room 2 includes a single switch gate at the end that blocks the exit of the room. The way these work is that once you collect all of the blue coins in the room, the gate moves. So the room required you to have the gate switch activated by collecting all the coins scattered across the room. This made it significantly harder to cheese the room since you basically couldn't do any major skips. The room in general was also stupidly difficult, forcing you to lure both of these Kevins till the end of the room and having multiple awkward timings combined with these diagonal down dashes to conserve a lot of speed. These are conventionally in the community known as ultras. Ultras usually are pretty lenient, but the ones in this room were very unforgiving. And ultras on moving Kevins resulted in the player being launched really far. Even slightly imperfect timings for these ultras into feathers could lead you to going too fast into the feather or not fast enough. And also, this Kevin spinner gap was a massive choke point in the room. If the Kevin went a single pixel into this block before being hit, it would not move. So you had to hit it before it could get into the block and also make sure you didn't die to the crystals. The timing of the dash pretty much depended on when you got to that area, and so the timing would differ for everyone, which made it an inconsistent and variable 1 to 3 frame timing. The room in general was much harder than it looked because of so much of the difficulty being in small nuances that may not be visible to the viewer. But of course all of this did not discourage the group. It was the only thing stopping them from clearing what the community genuinely thought was an impossible map, and proving the community wrong. And so they kept pushing. Within the next 2 days, a viable route was found with more human setups, and Parrot made quick progress of it, getting to his Kevin spinner gap and managing to also get the entire room in 2 segments. However, there was something odd about the ending of the room. You had to let the Kevin move you off screen, which teleported you to the other side of the Kevin after a delay, and that subsequently let you clear the room. But when Parrot was practicing the end of the room, sometimes the Kevin would instantly teleport him to the left, killing him instantly. The teleport needed to be delayed for it to work. The reason for this ended up being that depending on the pixel you hit the Kevin on, the Kevin would either instant teleport or slow teleport you. Basically meaning that this ending had a 25% chance of not working. This was just another element of brutality in this room. Anyways, 4 days after dying to the Kevin Spinner gap for the first time, Parrot managed to get past it and died in a really unfortunate way.
No, dude.
Dog was also grinding the room at this point, and a day later managed to get to the final Kevin Ultra. And on the same day, Parrot died to the same Parrot. Parrot seemed to be getting pretty unlucky with the Kevin Spinner gap, as he kept dying to it over and over again. And with the setup he used, it was extremely inconsistent, only having a 10% pass rate of it. Thankfully, after 27 hours of grinding a single room, 55 deaths to the Kevin Spinner gap and 6 chokes past it, on the 21st of December 2021, Parrot Dash would do the unthinkable.
Yes, I did it! Yes! Wait, yes! My fucking heartbeat, yes!
He became the first person to clear Crystal Garden after 37 hours of playing it, and became the new highest map to ever be cleared by a long shot. And no one in the community knew yet, besides the very few people helping him. He wasn't planning on uploading a clear yet because he wanted Dog to clear the map as well, so both clears could be uploaded at the same time. Only 2 days after Parrot's clear, Dog had managed to get on an insane run, getting past the Ultra Dash for his first time. He got to the final part, and all he could do was pray and hope. He got the instant teleport. If the dash into the Kevin was a single frame earlier or later, he would have cleared the map. Yet he fell a single frame too short. But something unexpected happened, before Parrot could make his video public and before Dog had the chance of clearing the map. The map got updated again, for the first time in months, to version 1.5 and a few hours later 1.5.1. This update completely revamped Room 1 and Room 3 to remove the cheese in those rooms, and the cheese used for both of those rooms by Dog and Parrot were no longer possible. This update was released at basically the worst time possible, and it was also completely unrelated to the clear of the map that had happened, as EdPO, like the rest of the Celeste community, did not know that the map had been cleared, or that any further progress had been made aside from the first room, which was publicly uploaded. This update happened as EdPO, with the help of a player named Cagdas, wanted to de-cheese the first room as much as possible to make the map better and bring the map closer to their visions and dreams. Unfortunately, this also meant that the cheese used for Room 1 and Room 3 no longer worked. EdPO had also hinted that he would be patching Room 2 next, so Parrot and Dog decided it was not worth trying to figure out those rooms again, considering they didn't see the point anymore. The map could get updated again and erase even more progress. And so on Christmas 2021, Parrot decided to upload his clear of the map, and Dog a few hours later uploaded his Crystal Garden video, which while not being a clear, was a single frame away from being one. They had managed to do what the community genuinely thought of as a monument of impossibility. A map that used to literally be used as a joke for when referencing inhumanly difficult maps. Except, there was a new development in the Celeste modding community, because by the time that those 2 videos were uploaded, it was no longer the hardest Celeste map. Only within those 4 days, a new hardest map had been cleared. There is a reason I have not mentioned what JoJo's project was, and that is because it would end up being the map that dethroned Crystal Garden. Only 37 hours after the Crystal Garden clear, JoJo would make history and clear the new hardest map. D1D7 has an entire separate history of its own and is also a very infamous map, but all you need to know is it was the hardest Celeste map to be cleared once JoJo pulled through with it. It also included the hardest Celeste screen to be done at that time, and unlike the Crystal Garden clear which was done in secret, the D1D7 clear was being done openly. On the Celeste hide list, which tracks the hardest cleared maps, Crystal Garden was placed at number 3, but a month later it was moved to being the second hardest map. Of course, all of this happening in such a short span of time led to the community being completely shocked. The hardest and the second hardest map got cleared within only 2 days, and with one of them being done in complete secrecy. In only a month, this entire project of clearing the map had happened. From a Crystal Garden clear being considered out of the question to being done in real time within a single month. However, one thing I should acknowledge is that, well, basically the entire clear was cheese and filled with skips. This was still not representative of the true difficulty of the map because of so much of the clear using unintended solutions and routes, and the perceived impossibility of the map before the clear mainly talked about the intended solutions, which was still unknown. The day after Christmas, Crystal Garden got updated again, now to version 1.6, which DGs Room 1 even further, and would end up being the final version of the map to this day. We will come back to this version of the map much later in the video, so let's first focus on 1.4 as that would stay as the main version of the map for a very long time. Now the thing with this map is it was only 4 rooms, which was very uncommon at the highest difficulty, with the main portion of difficulty being room 2, at least for 1.4. Combining this with the amount of jank and inconsistencies in the map, and you get a map no one wants to play, and no one really tried for the next few months. Nearly 5 months would pass, and by this time it was still the second hardest map, but then a Celeste player by the name of Sienna found some motivation to try and beat the map. She got unlucky and did room 1 in 8 hours, and room 2 would again prove to be a massive challenge. It would end up taking her 22 hours of grinding within only 4 days until she did it. She quickly managed to clear both room 3 and room 4, and became the second ever person to clear Crystal Garden on the 16th of May 2022, after 39 hours. This was also done on 1.4 just like the original clear. 2 months later, Fintan became the third person to ever clear the map. Not even 4 days after that, Izzy managed to also clear the map. Izzy cleared the map with only 15 hours spent on the map and 8k deaths, which was the lowest so far. Some more people cleared the map, but no new developments were made until March of 2023. A new strat for room 3 was found which made it significantly easier. By dashing up into the caverns while going through these spikes, the player's hitbox disappears for a bit, letting you clip through these spikes without dying. Though this was nothing major and it really did not affect the difficulty of the map much. Also during late May 2023, 3 separate people all managed to clear Crystal Garden all within 2 days of each other. The map also reached 10 clears at this point and has fallen to be the 5th hardest Celeste map. The next month, a very curious development occurred. You see, there was this guy by the name of Seas that had cleared the map in 43 hours only a month earlier. He liked the map a bit, so he decided to re-clear the map on the 6th of June, taking only 350 deaths to do so. This was the first time the map had ever been re-cleared more than once by the same person, and it also smashed the previous lowest death run of the map. To do it on only 350 deaths, all that opened the door to a new opportunity, goldening the map. If you don't know, golden berries are a collectible item in Celeste that can only be collected if you complete the entire map without dying. So basically, goldening Crystal Garden means doing all of its 4 rooms back to back, clearing the map without dying. Now while this was literally the 5th hardest map to clear, it seemed much more probable to do Deathless than any other map around its difficulty for clearing. The map was only 3 minutes long, which for top golden standards is abnormally short. Now I need to explain how the golden list works for everything later on to make sense. The top golden spreadsheet tracks the highest Celeste goldens achieved and ranks them according to their difficulty in the form of a tier system. Tier 0s are the hardest and tier 7s are only slightly harder than the Summit B-side golden, with the hardest berry in the base game being the easiest tier 3. The hardest goldens are also significantly harder than the hardest cleared maps. It was always thought for a while that goldening the map was very improbable and would be somewhere around tier 1 in difficulty, and no one ever wanted to do it because of how awful the map was to play. But Seas decided to try it anyways, as only 3 days later he got a 65 death run on the map, the lowest by far. A month later he managed to get to the biggest choke point of the map while having the golden. 1 week would pass and he had managed to get to the Kevin Ultra and died from dashing a single frame too early. He was 30 hours into the golden at this point and was already making good progress, and then a single hour later he passed the Ultra. He would die to the ending of room 2. Another week later on the 20th of July he would get the biggest progress thus far. He died to room 3, but still managing to do room 1 and 2 deathless, and getting the golden in 2 segments was the biggest achievement so far in terms of doing the map deathless. Well, it will be that way for a few minutes, as he would decide to continue this run without the golden to turn it into a low death run, and did this. He completed the map with only 2 deaths. Now while this was very lucky, it was still insane how close we were to the golden run. And well, we would get even closer on the 3rd of August, as he would get past the 3rd room. Fuck, okay, holy shit. This was not a surprising death at all. That final corner jump is by far the least consistent sequence of inputs in the entire map, so it did make sense. At this point it wasn't really a matter of if it was possible, but rather when would it happen. And after some more gambling attempts on the map, we would get the answer to that question only a day later. On the 4th of August, he got this one. I'm a fucking god. He had collected the golden berry after 6 chokes past room 2. It took him over 105 hours in total to do it, with 43 of those hours being just to clear the map. This was the new hardest map to be done deathless, but not the hardest deathless achievement, and it shocked a lot of people with how stupid the achievement really was. Comparing it to other goldens, it was ranked as around the 20th hardest golden to be done. It was also so abnormally different to every other hard golden because of being so short. Other goldens could be up to 40 minutes long, but this was only 3 minutes. This achievement also led to much more interest in the map, and many more people would clear the map right after the golden. For a while now, a player by the name of Spicky had wanted to do something for the past few months. If you don't know Spicky, he is one of the best at Deathless Marble It Up challenge, Deathless Celeste challenges, and so he set out to every single tier 1 golden. Of course, since Crystal Garden 1.4 was placed at low tier 1, this meant that he was forced to collect this golden, and this would end up being a complete catastrophe for him. So his journey began, quickly clearing the map in record time. He only spent 5 hours in clearing room 2 and around a total of 8 hours on the entire map to do it. And at the same time he was also practicing the golden. He very much did not enjoy playing the golden. Soon enough he had died halfway through room 2, but then he would get on an insane run, passing room 2 for his first time. He nearly fluked the map from halfway through the second room. Not even a single day later, in a massive burst of consistency, he would again die past room 2 2 more times. And then, after only 3 deaths past the second room, he managed to get the golden on the 19th of August. He became the second ever person to do so, and only taking 28 hours, which was extremely impressive for a golden of this magnitude. He could only describe his experience as pure misery, despite his time spent on the map being so little, and described it as the worst experience he had ever had while playing Celeste. After a very colorful description and some words about the golden in the map, he uploaded the video to YouTube and was a free man. Also on the same day as Spicky getting the golden, Clantis, the best Celeste player at the time, would manage the golden most LXVI, the second hardest map just to clear. The map has really claustrophobic and scary gameplay, and this was a massive achievement in the community, and also was the new hardest map to be done deathless, dethroning Crystal Garden 1.4 and the third hardest golden overall. But something happened between Seas and Spicky getting the 1.4 golden berry, another Crystal Garden related achievement. And for this one, we will need to rewind back to 2021, right after the original clear. But before that, I would appreciate if you could interact with this video in any way to help the algorithm. I spent a lot of time and passion into this project, so it would be nice to see any comments giving feedback or any thoughts about this video. And the same goes for clicking these 2 buttons. Anyways. Crystal Garden got updated again to 1.6, which ended up being the final version of the map. We will come back to this version much later in the video. So let's focus on the newest version now. As you would remember, Cactus was helping Edpio with de-cheesing Room 1 and Room 3, and this also meant he was trying to figure out the solution to Room 1. On the same day that the map was updated to 1.6, which was on the 26th of December in 2021, the intended solution for Room 1 was released to the world. The solution was very convoluted, but allegedly this was still way easier than doing Room 3 and Room 4 intended, which just made everyone question how complex and difficult the intended solutions for those two rooms could be. Anyways, Cactus did not clear the room obviously, and instead opted to use 4 save states for the run. The worst part of the room was easily this jump. The jump depended on where the bumper was located, as bumpers move on a cycle back and forth. And so the only two possibilities that could happen when you reached the input were either that the input wouldn't even be possible because you couldn't get enough speed from the bumper, or that it would be a really inconsistent frame perfect. And then after doing this timing, you had to perform a really late jump to get enough momentum to grab this block, and then navigate through these bumpers. The rest of the room was also extremely difficult and inconsistent. This by itself, combined with the very tight and awkward timings throughout the room, was enough to make practically no one attempt any actual progress for clearing the room at that time. Now, for Room 3, no one had really thought of what the intended solution could have been. A few theories were made, but nothing major. There were multiple tasks of the map, but none of them used any humanly viable tricks, and none of them were even close to what an intended solution could look like. Now let's fast forward to 2023. Within the first few months of the year, a player by the name of Firethief would figure out another new way to cheese Room 3, and a few weeks later in early August, he would publish a task showing off his findings. This task was different from every other Room 3 task, as it used a strat that seemed much more humanly viable. He does some extremely difficult Kevin hits, clips through these spikes, and a frame perfect demo dash to go between these spikes. The way a demo dash works is that if you use the crouch dash keybind, then your hitbox will be the same as the player's crouch state when dashing, allowing you to go through some spinner gaps. And in cases like this without a setup, it is a frame perfect trick, meaning you only have a 60th of a second to do the input, as Celeste runs at 60 frames per second. This entire room still seemed extremely difficult even after cheesing it so much, and no one really wanted to do it until Dog came around. So you probably remember Dog, you know, the person that helped with the original 1.4 clear. Well, he has kind of cracked the game, and on the 11th of August, he would publish this video that would be completely beyond everyone's expectations. He shadow dropped the Crystal Garden 1.6 clear out of nowhere, clearing the map on its newest version in not even 10 hours. How did he even clear Room 1 or 3? Well, for Room 3, he used a route similar to what Firethief had done, except he uses much easier setups, and instead of clipping through these spikes by holding onto your Kevin, he performed a spike clip by fast falling through the spikes. This lets him go through the spikes in a single frame, and thus not die. After a frame perfect demo dash and clipping through another set of spikes, he had cleared the room. For Room 1, it was also very tricky. He used practically the same routes as the intended solution, but with better setups, such as dashing into this feather instead of using the bumper. Until this part. The jump into the bumper to get enough speed is unfathomably inconsistent, so doing this room did not seem viable. But Dog had another trick up his sleeve as he simply did this. A frame perfect demo dash through the spinners, skipping the entire hardest part of the room. He continues the rest of the room as normal and clears it without any problems. He had cleared those rooms in around 8 hours. Room 4 was no problem as he had already cleared it 2 years ago. And Room 2 only took him an hour since he had practically already done it 2 years ago. It also ended up being that Room 1 and Room 3 were both still easier than Room 2 for a first clear. Around 4 days after the first clear of 1.6, Seas would get the second clear of the map, which also included a much easier strat for Room 3, skipping one of the steps that Dog had used for the spike clip. Another month later, Nins managed to also clear the map on 1.6 out of absolutely nowhere. Now let's rewind a bit back to when Seas cleared the map. At that point, he already wanted to go for the golden, which sounded extremely silly considering only one other person had even cleared the map. But he had also just finished with Golden Ink 1.4 and seemed like the perfect person to do it because of that. He already had a lot of experience with Room 2 and 4, but there was a big problem. This was going to be astronomically harder than doing 1.4. In 1.4, the main difficulty of the map was by absolute miles the second room of the map. The first room was clearable every single attempt and the other two rooms were also decently easy compared to Room 2. But in 1.6, all the first three rooms were of extreme difficulty, being on par or higher than Room 2 for Golden Ring, and all of them had some factor of inconsistency to them. The first room in general was very inconsistent with a frame perfect demo dash and a very inconsistent ending. The second room was just hard and had a 25% chance for the instant teleport at the end. The third room had the frame perfect demo, and then of course the final room is very chokeable with the final cardinal jump. That had a chance of not even being possible depending on your vertical positioning. Because of the map being so much harder on the newest version, he would need to have extreme consistency with every single trick in every room to have a shot of doing the golden, which would also require even more strat development to happen and more hours spent. Seas would commence the grind for the golden berry a bit after clearing the map, and this would end up becoming a very mentally draining journey. At this point, the sunk cost fallacy was in full effect, and the map was not enjoyable in the slightest, with him basically forcing himself to play the map while being completely hopeless. But after acquiring the knowledge that 99% of gamblers quit before making it big, he kept gambling for the golden run. All it took was a lot of perseverance, determination, and some really bad luck. But he had done the impossible, and collected the 1.6 golden berry almost 2 years after the 1.6 update and 2.5 years since the map was released. He died a total of 14 times to the 25% chance in room 2, 22 deaths to the third room, and 9 deaths to the final room. In total, he had nearly 250 hours in Crystal Garden, showing his dedication to the map. Now for how hard the golden was, absolutely no one knew, so it was a bit tricky to place it anywhere on the top golden list. Seas claimed it to be significantly harder than the 1.4 golden berry, with how much more consistency you needed with room 2 to do the golden due to a much lower room 1 pass rate and many other factors. It was eventually decided to be placed at high tier 1 for a multitude of reasons, making the map sit as the 4th hardest Celeste golden at the time, which is also where it remains to this day. Now, while it may seem that the history of the map is complete, with the newest version of the map being done Deathless, there are still a few things left, mainly to find the intended solutions for every room. Again, the map was intended to be a routing puzzle map. Though room 1 was solved and room 2 was practically solved, even after nearly 3 years, no one has figured out anything for room 3 or 4. Even Etpio himself doesn't remember solutions for either of the final 2 rooms, so even the creator of the map can't help. So unless we ever figure out the solutions for either room, we will never truly know how hard Crystal Garden really is. We only really know how hard room 1 is, and again, that is allegedly the easiest room of the map according to the creator. And the intended solution for that room is already stupidly difficult, so you can take that as you will for the difficulty of the rest of the rooms. I've always found this map quite fascinating, and also found it interesting the attitude that Etpio had with the map. The map is such a ludicrous concept, with him originally not even wanting any types of solutions of the map to be publicly released, and his elitism. This map has a lot of history attached to it, from the map being released to being considered the peak of Celeste difficulty, from being cleared in secret to being dethroned as the hardest map clear in under 2 days, to being golden on 1.4. And from getting cleared on the newest version of the map in secret, to finally having the newest version of the map be done Deathless. And with 2 of the 4 rooms still being unsolved. I hope you enjoyed watching and can leave a comment on the video, and of course do the other usual YouTube stuff. Hopefully you can have a newfound appreciation for the map now. Thanks and goodbye.